When I asked the tarot what my future spouse would love most about me, I expected a message of hope, not destruction. The cards didn't describe a future love. They described my wife, the secrets she hid, the man she met, and how fate made sure I'd find out. Through her lies. Before I tell you how a tarot reading ended my marriage and started my revenge, make sure you hit like, share this story, and subscribe, because what you're about to hear might change how you see love forever. I've never believed in tarot cards. To me, they were just bits of paper people used to feel like the universe was paying attention. I used to laugh whenever my wife Lyra sat at the kitchen table surrounded by candles, whispering to her cards as if they could hear her. She'd close her eyes, breathe in deep, and ask her questions like she was speaking to some invisible friend. I'd tease her, call her Madame Lyra, and she'd throw a card at me, smiling that half-serious, half-playful smile of hers. That night wasn't supposed to mean anything. It started as a joke. We just had dinner, the house was quiet, and she was already shuffling her deck like she always did when she was bored. I remember leaning back in my chair and saying, "All right, let's see what my future spouse loves about me." She laughed, thinking I was making fun of her again. "Future spouse," she said, raising an eyebrow. "You already have one," I shrugged. "Yeah, but maybe the cards will tell me what you love about me, or what you're hiding." I said it with a grin, but she didn't laugh this time. Instead, she just looked at me for a second too long before smiling again. One of those careful smiles people use when they're covering something up. She drew 3 cards and placed them face down. The sound of them hitting the table felt louder than it should have. Then she flipped them, one by one. The first was the moon. She said it represented secrets, illusions, and intuition. The second was the lovers reversed. She hesitated before explaining that it could mean conflict in a relationship or imbalance. The third was the tower. She went quiet. I laughed. "What? No happy ending for me?" But she didn't laugh. Her fingers trembled just slightly as she gathered the cards back up. She told me the cards were confused, that maybe they were meant for someone else. I didn't think much of it at the time, but something about her tone stuck with me. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Like the words were fighting to stay calm while something inside her screamed. I didn't realize it that night, but the joke I made would become the prophecy of my own heartbreak. The cards hadn't been confused. They were speaking the truth, just not the one I was ready to hear. If you're watching this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes even the smallest moments of curiosity can turn into the biggest lessons of karma. The next morning, I couldn't shake off what happened. It wasn't that I believed the cards, but something about the way Lyra reacted stayed in my head. She was distant, at breakfast barely spoke, barely looked at me. Usually, she'd hum while making coffee, ask about my day ahead, tease me about my obsession with perfection. But that morning, silence filled every corner of the room. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled, said she didn't sleep well, and changed the subject. For a few days, I tried to ignore it. Told myself I was overthinking. But small things began to stand out. The late-night calls she'd take in another room, the way she'd quickly lock her phone when I walked by, and the new perfume that didn't smell like hers. It was subtle at first, easy to excuse. But somewhere deep down, something in me started whispering that the cards weren't confused after all. One evening, I found her in the same spot, again candles lit, cards spread out in front of her. She didn't notice me standing at the door. Her voice was low, almost trembling as she whispered something I couldn't hear. I took a step closer, pretending to be casual. "Another reading?" I asked. She jumped slightly, then smiled too quickly, saying she was just doing one for a friend. I sat down across from her, the flickering light catching the edge of her wedding ring. "Do mine again," I said. "Let's see if the cards are still confused." She hesitated, then nodded. The deck shuffled in her hands, slower this time, her fingers tight. She drew 3 new cards. The first was the High Priestess Mystery, Secrets, Intuition. The second was 3 of Swords, Heartbreak, Betrayal, Pain. The last, the Devil. Temptation, Addiction. Lies. Her breath caught, just for a second. "These don't mean what they look like," she said softly, her eyes darting to me. They're symbolic, not literal. But I wasn't listening anymore. My heart pounded. My throat felt tight. It was as if the universe itself had started whispering what I was too afraid to face. The candlelight flickered, shadows dancing across her face, making her look like someone I didn't know. I remember forcing a smile, saying, "Guess I'm doomed, huh?" She laughed nervously, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every image, every word from that reading replayed in my mind. The cards weren't pointing at my future, they were showing me the cracks already spreading through my present. And soon, those cracks would split my life wide open. In the days that followed, I tried convincing myself I was just being paranoid. Marriage isn't perfect, I told myself. People change, routines fade, and sometimes silence just means comfort. But even as I tried to bury my thoughts, something in me had already started to dig on its own. Every little thing began to look different. Her late nights weren't about work anymore. They were patterns. The smiles she gave me were practiced. And that soft distance in her voice, suddenly it didn't sound tired. It sounded guilty. It's strange how you can live beside someone for years and still miss the moment they start slipping away. I noticed she began dressing up more when she went to yoga. She never wore perfume for me anymore, but now she smelled like a luxury boutique every time she came home. Her phone, once left lying around without a care, was now locked tighter than a safe. She'd angle it away even when replying to a simple message. One night, while she showered, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone, charging on the nightstand. My hands actually shook. I told myself not to do it. I told myself that if I had to check, it already meant something was broken. But curiosity has a cruel way of pretending to protect you. I didn't unlock it that night. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the tarot reading. The moon, the lovers reversed. The tower. I didn't need the cards to tell me anymore. I could feel the meaning breathing down my neck. Then came the perfume. A different scent, one that wasn't hers, clinging to her jacket like evidence. I remember holding it up to my nose, trying to rationalize it. Maybe someone at yoga hugged her. Deep down I knew. The excuses I was making weren't for her, they were for me. Because accepting the truth meant acknowledging that the woman I loved might already belong to someone else. The next morning, I watched her leave, her laughter echoing faintly down the hall. I felt a coldness I couldn't describe. Something inside me flipped from confusion to quiet determination. That's when I decided I wouldn't ask. I wouldn't accuse. I'd find out the truth myself. Not through suspicion, not through guessing, but through undeniable proof. And somehow, deep inside, I knew the same fate that spoke through those cards was about to speak through her secrets too. Once the doubt settled into something colder, I couldn't unsee it. Every time her phone buzzed, my pulse spiked. Every time she smiled at a text, my stomach twisted. It wasn't jealousy, it was recognition. You can tell when love starts living somewhere else. You can feel it in the way someone's eyes stop searching for you. It happened on a Tuesday night. She'd left her phone on the counter while stepping out to take a call on the balcony. The screen lit up with a notification. "Ari, consultant. Can't wait to see you again." My heart froze. Consultant. We didn't have any Ari in our lives. I opened the message thread before my courage could change its mind. What I found didn't need explanation, it burned in plain sight. The messages weren't professional. They were intimate, coded, full of the kind of warmth that used to belong to me. "You smell like peace. He suspects nothing. Tomorrow, same time." Each sentence stabbed quietly, a small betrayal that left a loud echo. I scrolled for what felt like hours, pictures, deleted voice notes, plans, and then one message that crushed. "Whatever denial I had left, I'll tell him soon. I promise." I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, the phone in my hand, watching my reflection on the black screen. I think part of me shut down. My love for her didn't vanish. Shit just froze, like a lake under winter light. And beneath that ice, something darker began to move. A quiet hunger for the truth, for justice, for closure. When she came back inside, I had already placed her phone exactly where it was. She smiled, asked if I wanted tea. I said yes. My voice sounded calm to calm. She didn't notice anything. Not the storm gathering behind my eyes. Not the betrayal burning beneath my skin. That night I decided I wouldn't confront her yet. She had used her beloved tarot to speak with the unseen. I would use truth to speak through her lies. If she believed the cards revealed fate, then fate would reveal her. I started collecting pieces, quietly screenshots, locations, small details. The puzzle began forming faster than I expected, as every piece fit too perfectly to be a coincidence. The woman I trusted most had been cheating right under my roof. And now, I wasn't just her husband. I was her audience waiting for the final act of her performance to collapse under its own weight. By the time I decided to confront Lyra, I had already rehearsed the scene 100 times in my head. Every version felt too loud, too chaotic. But when the moment finally came, it wasn't rage that led Mitt with something quieter, sharper. I wanted her to reveal herself, not through an argument, but through truth she could no longer hide. I waited until a Friday night, our supposed date night. She came home dressed beautifully, her hair still carrying that faint trace of someone else's perfume. I asked her if she'd do another tarot reading with me, just like old times. Her eyes lit up, a mix of surprise and relief. "You're finally coming around to the cards?" she teased, trying to sound playful. I smiled. Maybe it's time I start believing in what they reveal. She set everything up, just like before the candles. The deck. That little brass holder for the incense she claimed brought clarity. The air felt too calm, too still. I watched her shuffle the cards with those same hands that had touched someone else. And when she laid out the first one, I saw her fingers tremble. "The moon," I said softly. "That's the card for secrets, right?" Her eyes flicked up to mine. Sometimes she whispered. I nodded. "Then what about this one?" I flipped another card from the deck the lovers reversed. Her breath caught. "Conflict, imbalance, betrayal," I said, repeating her own words from before. "Adin, that's not what it means here," she stammered, reaching for the card. But I stopped her hand. My voice was calm, steady, colder than I'd ever heard it. "And this?" I revealed the third card, the Tower. Destruction. Collapse. Truth exposed. The silence that followed felt endless. She tried to laugh it off, said I was being dramatic. So I slid her phone across the table, the screen. It was unlocked, the messages open. Every secret she thought she'd buried, now staring back at her. Her face went pale. Tears welled. Excuses stumbled out of her mouth. Confusion, apologies, denial. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I just looked at her and said, "You told me the cards never lie. You were right." When she reached out, I stood up. Her voice cracked, calling my name, but I was already walking toward the door. Behind me, I heard the clatter of cards hitting the floor. That sounds, small, hollow, final, was the end of everything. The fate she tried to hide had finally found her, just as the cards promised it would. When I walked out that night, I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. Silence can be louder than any argument, and mine echoed through every corner of that house she'd turned into a stage. For a while, I just drove nowhere in particular. The city lights blurred past like ghosts, and my thoughts were the only sound I could hear. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way people expect. What I felt was colder, like frost spreading through my veins. A kind of calm that comes only when love finally dies and pride takes its place. In the days that followed, she called, she texted, she begged to explain. I didn't respond. I had already listened to enough of her stories this time. I wanted her to listen to mine. The truth. And I wanted her to feel it the way I did, slowly, inevitably, without mercy. So I did something poetic. I gathered every tarot card she ever used, the same deck she'd once said never lied. I replaced each card with a printed screenshot of her messages. The lovers became her confession. The moon, her hidden chats. The tower, her meeting plans with him. Every lie she spoke had its own place in the deck. Then, I wrapped it in the same silk cloth she used to protect it, sealed it inside a box, and mailed it to her office. No note, no name. Just the deck of truth. A week later, She showed up at my door. Her eyes were swollen, her voice shaking. She said she got my gift. I didn't say a word. She asked if this was revenge, if I wanted to ruin her. I looked at her and said, "No, Lyra, you did that yourself. I just let the cards do their job." She broke down right there on my porch, crying the way I used to when I begged the universe to give me a sign. But this time, I didn't feel pity. I felt closure. The kind that doesn't come from forgiveness, but from balance, from knowing that what's done eventually finds its way back home. When she left, I watched her car disappear into the distance, and for the first time in months, the air felt light. No cards, no readings, just silence. And that silence wasn't empty anymore. It was justice, cold, clean, and final. Months passed, and for the first time in years, I learned what real quiet felt like. No tarot cards on the kitchen table, no late-night whispers from another room. No pretending that love was still alive when it had already turned into habit. I didn't move houses. I stayed. Because the silence she left behind wasn't a wound anymore. It was peace. In those early weeks, I went through a strange kind of withdrawal. I'd still wake up expecting her side of the bed to be warm. Still reach out for a presence that was long gone. But pain has its own way of healing you. It forces you to face yourself. And when I finally did, I realized something simple but powerful. She hadn't broken me. She had freed me. I started focusing on my work again, rebuilding my routines piece by piece. I stopped checking my phone for messages that wouldn't come. And somewhere in that stillness, I began to feel like myself again, not the version molded to fit someone else's story, but the man I was before I forgot what self-respect felt like. One evening, months later, I was sitting at a small cafe downtown, just reading. A woman at the next table dropped her notebook, and I picked it up for her. She smiled, said thank you, and for some reason, the way she looked at me didn't feel like curiosity. It felt like recognition. We talked for hours about work, about music, about how strange it is when people stop listening, but still expect to be understood. Her name was Ira. I didn't tell her about Lyra. Not then. I didn't need to. Ira wasn't there to replace anyone. She was there to remind me what honesty sounded like. One night, she looked at me and said, "You don't try to impress anyone, do you?" I laughed. "Not anymore," I said. "That's what the card said once, that someone would love me for being real." She smiled softly. Then maybe the cards weren't lying after all. It hit me then. Maybe fate doesn't always punish. Sometimes it restores. Sometimes karma doesn't come as pain, but as peace. So if you're watching this, remember, what's meant for you won't hide behind lies. And what's built on deceit will always fall, one card at a time.